This passage that Sue read out today is a part of what we call the Sermon on the Plain. The Sermon on the Plain, which sounds a little less grandiose than the Sermon on the Mount, which is where we get more of the blesseds are in the book of Matthew 5-7. And in the book of Matthew, Sermon on the Mount is at the beginning of Jesus' ministry. This is his big flourish into preaching, teaching people about the best way to live. It happens on this mountaintop and it's amazing. Lots of amazing things happen in Jesus' ministry on mountaintops. Lots of amazing things happen in our lives on top of mountaintop experiences, as you would call it. And in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus delivers his killer sermon. It kicks his ministry into high gear. But we're not in the book of Matthew. We're in the book of Luke. And this story happens later in Jesus' ministry. So Jesus has already been out and about, he's been preaching, he's been teaching, and he has this huge following of people who want healing, who want to be known and loved. And this huge group of people are made up by Jewish people and Gentiles, who are non-Jewish people, and the Pharisees, who are the religious officials, who I must say are probably following more out of concern for the way that Jesus is using the Jewish law to twist norms. And by this time in the story in Luke, Jesus has really ticked off a lot of religious leaders with what he's said and with what he's done. Now, just before the story today, in Luke, Jesus has gone up onto the mountain. So again, a lofty and holy mountaintop experience. And he's decided sort of who the apostles and leaders will be, the Transfiguration. And he's gone down the mountain, so this is where the story starts. He's gone down the mountain and is now on what is described as a flat plain where it says that many gathered. Now this is pretty typical of the Gospel of Luke, as we'll be exploring throughout many, many months. It's important in the Gospel of Luke to place such an important sermon on a geographical or physical equal space. Flat, plain. Everyone's on the same level. There's Jews and Gentiles, disciples and Pharisees. All of them are together. So here they are, not on a mountaintop, but on flat ground. And Jesus delivers a sermon of blessings and woes. Now, Bruce J. Molina has written a book. It's a fantastic book. It's called The Social Gospel of Jesus. And in his book, he looks at passages like this in Luke to provide an ancient Mediterranean perspective. And one of the more pertinent points that he makes, he brings up for the passage today. And it's around who is considered poor. Because Jesus starts saying, "Blessed are the poor." Well, who are the poor? What does that mean? Because our Western modern understanding of what poor means is not the same as an ancient Mediterranean perspective. So Melina explains that the ancient Mediterranean perspective is that the poor are those who cannot maintain inherited status due to circumstances that befell them and their family, such as debt, or being in a foreign land, or sickness, or death, or some personal physical accident. People were considered poor not due to so much a lack of money per se, but because of the precariousness of such a person's social position. So the rich then were not simply those with wealth, but those who had gained it through exploitation. In a moral sense, to be rich meant to be powerful due to greed or avarice or exploitation.
How's that tea?
Just as to be poor meant to be weak due to the inability to maintain one's inherited social station. Talk about generational wealth. So with this understanding of the poor, then, let's go back to our story. Jesus preaches, yeah, that's right. Jesus preaches that the poor are blessed because the kingdom of heaven is theirs. A kingdom of heaven where everything is turned inside out and upside down. The kingdom of heaven where the outsiders are actually the insiders. That the poor are actually rich. That the unhealthy are healthy. A place, as Nadia Bolz-Weber puts it, where the weak are blessed in a world that admires only the strong. So Jesus is preaching on this equal place, that the poor are a blessing. Those who cannot keep their social standing and then who are ostracized are the ones who belong in the kingdom of heaven. The poor are a blessing. And responding to this, they should be given what they need by those with more means. Not that they are blessed because they receive charity. So what do we do about it? So for many in this world, they hear Jesus' message of liberation and hope in this Sermon on the Plain. They hear that they are blessed. But for others of us, we're far more likely to need to hear Jesus' woes, which is uncomfortable. We hear them because we live in one of the richest countries in the whole world. We need to hear them because we have good social standing. That our gender or our age puts us in powerful places in our society. Jesus' woes, the second half of what he says, are uncomfortable words to hear. But Damon Garcia puts it best when he says that these statements may be unsettling because they comfort that many of us enjoy. So when we read the woes after the blessings, Jesus doesn't mean to shame us, but to wake people up. Are you awake yet? No matter how hopeful his words are, some of those in the crowd that day have placed their trust elsewhere. And the choices that the choices that they have made are working for them. For these people, the woes are not curses but warnings. It's as if Jesus has said, well, certain things are worthy of your trust and other things are sure to betray it. So for me, this puts us into a time of questioning, of being awake, of receiving epiphany. What do we put our trust in? Is it our social standing? All of us do in some way, shape or form. Do we put our trust in our savings accounts? And what would you do if those weren't reliable? What would you do to make those things reliable? A lot would blackmail or withhold employees' super payments or cook the books. We've seen it. We've seen it in society. To make the things that we trust in more trustworthy, more reliable. And there the warning is. So many of us need to begin with this sermon on the plain, understanding where our trust lies. And what we have inherited from society as blessings that are actually woes or warnings instead. What have we received as blessings that are actually warnings? Garcia says that the Messiah embodies a whole new way of being in the world that is better and more basic to life than eking out an existence or building barns and filling them. To be on the way with the one is for us to know its character, an extent of God's realm and God's mercy. So this ends the first part of what is a two-parter from Luke. And next week we will be looking at the second half of this sermon on the plain. These blessings and these warnings on geographical equal land for a social gospel pleading equity. Amen. Blessed are you, weary one, for cosmic love is on your side. Go forth, protected by community care and attuned to your inherent belovedness. As you go from this place, take the light with you and be the light of Christ wherever you are. Amen.